Hey, fight fans, welcome back to Carlo Prusa MMA today. We got a special guest for you. We got a UFC veteran. He is the guitar hero. He is Mr. Justin Jaynes. Justin, what's up, my friend? How you doing on this wonderful Thursday night?
Man, it's starting to warm up here in Vegas. Had like an 80-degree day today. Out here loving it in the shorts and the t-shirt. Can't complain about much out here, man.
No, absolutely, man. You know, you've been a guy who's been at this for such a long time. And I think there's so many people who watch in this day and age. They forget, man, 20 to 25 years ago, people were calling this human cockfighting. This was not legal at every single state. You had people think it's like barbaric prison activity. When you first got into this, do you have any stories of maybe fighting bars, barns, mystery opponents, bad medicals? Do you have anything crazy?
Yeah, man, I come from the Wild Wild West days. I had my first competition in 2007. Sometimes we do tournaments. Sometimes you show up to a bar, and I remember it was called XCC, it was like Extreme Cage Combat, that you just essentially put your name on a list, and it's like, all right, hey, let's find out who the baddest guy in town is, man. And we were fighting a ring, we were fighting cages, fighting makeshift rings. There was no sanctioning body. You could fight it any way. There was no medicals. I remember being able to stomp and knee the head of grounded opponents early on in Indiana. Then somewhere around 2009, 2010, I think Michigan got a sanctioning. But the craziest part about it was you could fight as much as you want. I had 50 amateur fights, and a lot of people are like, "Wow, that's fucking crazy," because you can't do that really anymore just because of sanctioning and stuff. You get suspended each month. But there was times where I'd fight Saturday night, Thursday night, and then again Saturday. And I remember I fought for ECW or ECC or something like that, and we did 8-man tournament, and you're fighting 2, 3 times in a night. I mean, those were the real days, man. That's when real fighters were around and people really wanted to see. You didn't have these Conor McGregor wannabes that are just talking shit, calling their shots. That was back in the day when guys really wanted to see who the baddest guy was in town.
You know, you put a perfect segue into my next question here. One thing we're seeing this day and age is how personality and entertainment driven this sport is. Let's be real, guys, man. Guys are putting on characters. They're people they're not because they know it's going to get in the UFC. They're going to get title shots. They're going to get more money. How has personality and entertainment impacted combat sports?
Oh man, I think it's I mean, a lot of guys, you look at like Colby Covington, who I think is just trash. But he still can talk his way into in main event fights. Man, he hasn't won a fight in like 5 years, but people would just want to see him get his ass whipped so bad that he can talk his way. Or you remember Chael Sonnen? Of course, how could you remember Chael Sonnen? He's fucking incredible. I like him a lot. Really nice guy. But at the end of the day, like he didn't deserve to be fighting Anderson Silva for a championship once, let alone twice, or fight John Jones for a championship. So you see a lot of guys seeing these lesser fighters like Chael Sonnen. Again, I think he's a great guy. I've met him a bunch of times. He actually did a podcast about me after one of my UFC fights I didn't really agree with, but regardless, great guy, great fighter, but definitely not UFC champion caliber.
You know, I think a big byproduct of this whole entertainment personality driven phenomenon is something called the casual fan. So these are the people that they're usually drunk, they're in B-dubs, they love to yell twist them, you know what, they have all these crazy takes. Overall, what do we think of this? You know, is it just something that maybe a little bit annoying, but good for the sport as a whole?
I do think it's good for the sport, and I come from a WWE, WWF background fan. That's kind of what got me involved when I was young because I thought Steve Austin was I thought pro wrestling was real, and that's how I got involved with wrestling. So I can't say I hate it all. I mean, I love the build-ups, I love Conor McGregor, but here's the problem: there are no Conor McGregors. Conor McGregor is one of a kind, and too many guys try to be like Conor McGregor, and nobody can go out there and call their shots like Conor did. Conor be like, "Oh, I'll finish him in the second round, knockout left hand," and then he'd do it. And guys are trying to emulate that, and they're getting a little too far into the character. And I think a lot of fans pick up on it. And you look at Colby Covington, talk about how tough he is, and he just keeps getting. I just think Colby is just so awful. I think he's a bad person. I think he has a bad character, and I don't even think he's a good fighter. I mean, he's that old school one-dimensional fighter that used to work, and that one-dimensional good wrestler fighter, could get to the top. But the sport's evolved so much in the last 15 years, you cannot just be good at one thing and get the top anymore.
You know, I think so many casuals watch it. They look at the McGregors, the Habibs, the Masvidals, and they're like, wow, being a fighter, greatest life ever. Little do they know, man, battling it down the regional scene, you're losing money. Guys have wives. Guys have kids. You have to pay to train for the most part, get up early, stay late, miss every holiday, don't get to see your family members often, weddings, anniversaries, dinners. It all goes to fighting. That's what comes first. You've done this for such a long time. You've experienced the highs. You've experienced the lows. You're continuing to do it. What's made you want to keep punching and kicking off for all these years?
Man, it's kind of been my identity, man, and I'm really having an identity crisis ever after getting cut from the UFC in 2022, because I took a neck injury. I had to get neck surgery in 2022, and unfortunately, I just haven't been the same person. And when I say person, I should say the same fighter ever since. And I haven't been able to put together wins in a long time. Having that and constantly in the back of my head, taking those kind of injuries, and I had hand surgery, nose surgery, neck surgery, back to back to back, all within 2 years, and just realizing that you're not this inhuman fighter. It's really tough, man. And I've ruined so many personal relationships. I've ruined so many romantic relationships. As I talked about on a podcast earlier, I moved to Vegas to train and become the best fighter I could be. And I missed out on half my 16-year-old son's his childhood, because I moved out to Vegas in 2012. He was 3 years old. I'm still here in 2025. Fortunately for me, he's moving out here in the next couple months to finish his high school years. But man, it's as being a fighter is great. The best thing about being a fighter is the flexible schedule. Is basically I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. Even now, I work at Extreme Couture. With that being said, there's always that negative side of the coin of all the relationships you're going to ruin. And that's if you're serious about it. I mean, you can be 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on land, and still have these great relationships with your family. And every now and then you'll find a really good girl that supports you. But unfortunately for my career, I haven't had that opportunity. And like I said, I've ruined a lot of personal relationships. I've ruined a lot of romantic relationships, because of it, man. People don't understand the sacrifice. You can't be 1 foot, and I'm just reiterating now, you just can't be 1 foot in the water. You got to be all in. And you know what? And that's the thing, like, you talk about like becoming a doctor, and I have a lot of doctor friends out here in Vegas. And if you go to school and you dedicate 10 years of your life, 12 years of your life, and you get your doctorate, I think the minimum in Las Vegas as you'll make as a doctor is 250,000 a year. Well, I've dedicated my whole life to MMA, and I've made it to the highest bout. I got a knockout in the UFC. I've had some incredible moments, but being 35 years old, put in the financial situation, I've been single for about a year now. It's been really tough to manage relationships. It's been really tough to manage financial situations. Very fortunate that I'm pretty smart. I'm smart with my money. That I've made some good investments, and I'm pretty good at saving money. So that's been great for me. But that doesn't. I'm not speaking for everybody. A lot of people bury themselves in debt trying to get to the UFC. They get to the UFC and they realize it's not all chalked up to be. It's don't get me wrong. My time in the UFC was great. My 30-second knockout on Frank Camacho was great. But at the end of the day, when I last year was a really hard awakening, I had about 60,000 saved up, and there was a house I wanted to buy for 350,000. It's like, all right, I'm gonna put 60,000 down. I have a 750 credit score, and this should work out perfect. I pay $2,500 a month rent, and I've always paid at least $1,600. So it's like you look at my credit score, you look at my down payment. And I was denied from 3 different loaning agencies because as a fighter, you don't prove income. You're a gig worker. You don't know when your next big paycheck's going to be. And that was a hard realization this past year that maybe I didn't make the right choice. And I battle with that every single day.
I think a lot of people still don't understand really what mixed martial arts is. Obviously, it's come a long way, but I think some people look at it, they just see fighting, these guys just going in there fighting another guy. But really, it's more than just a fight. It's a fight in life. From what I've seen, fighters, obviously they're going to train. They're wanting to win championships. They want to go to the UFC. But it's that fight for financial freedom. It's that fight to have freedom and independence, to live life your way, not get stuck in complacency, not having to do that 9-to-5 job, not having to follow the norm of society. For you, is that half the fight?
Yeah, that's everything, man. That's the thing. It's, as I've always said, people always ask, like, why do you want to fight? And it's like, I'd rather get punched in the face than punch a clock. And, I look at my family who's very blue collar. Like, we don't make any money back in Detroit, Michigan. And, and I wanted something better for myself. I wanted something better for my family because I was under the impression that was given to myself. Not that anybody gave it to me, but the idea that I thought I had is once I get to the UFC, I'm going to be able to take care of myself and my family and have the freedom to do whatever I want. And I'll tell you what, I couldn't be more far from the truth. And if I had any message to give to fighters coming up, it's you need to understand that just by getting to the UFC, and even if you have a career in the UFC, I got a lot of buddies that fight in the UFC for 10, 12 years. Some guys are still fighting in the UFC. But here's the thing. Say you make 50, let's say you make $100,000 in a fight. That's great. But what if you get injured and you can't fight for a year or 2 years? That $100,000 goes very, very fast, especially with inflation right now, man. I have a hybrid car. I pay $80 for a tank of gas. I'm paying $2,500 a month rent, and I live in a 1,400 square foot house. I drive a car that's 2012, and if you're not good with money, And I see a lot of these fighters get to the UFC, get a big bonus, and they go out and they buy all this expensive stuff. You will run out sooner than you won't.
Obviously made your UFC debut against Frank Camacho. What a great moment for you. Where were you when you got the phone call that it was time to go to the big show?
I was on my way to have dinner. I was moving on my way to a Thai food, and my manager called, and he called me on Monday and asked if I wanted to fight that weekend. I said yes. Max Raxkoff, I don't know if you know who that is. He ended up taking my spot. He was a teammate of mine, and so I was really depressed about it. I found out Wednesday that Max got the call over me. I was going to go, drain my sours in some alcohol and some Thai food, and on my way there, my manager called and said they had another fallout. Um, Fucking showed up, knocked Frank out in 30 seconds, and unfortunately after that, that's the last great moment I had. It's the next couple instances and that's another thing. It's the UFC doesn't owe you anything, and they're going to make sure that that coming from a blue collar background, if you're my neighbor and you come and help me out, I feel in debt to you. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to help you out when you need it or when you can. The UFC isn't like that. I took a short notice fight on 2-day notice. The next fight I had 3-week notice. So I had to make 145 against Gavin Tucker. I'd never made 145 in the history of my career. I had 3 weeks to make it. I made it. Fucking sucked. Next fight after that, I had COVID. They said, okay, when are you going to be cleared from COVID? I'm like, I'll be cleared, I don't know, fucking 10 days from now. And they're like, all right, well, you'll fight the very next weekend. So imagine I didn't train for 10 days. And then that Monday I go into the gym and I have 5 days to prepare to fight Gabriel Benitez. And he was in a similar situation too. He had COVID too. Then after that, who did I have? Oh, yeah, Devontae Smith. They called me on Wednesday. They're like, hey, you want to fight this weekend? I'm like, no, dude, I haven't been training. And they're like, well, if you don't fight this weekend, we're going to cut you from the roster. So I go out there out of shape. I have a fucking fat roll hanging over my stomach. I look like a fucking piece of shit. And everyone doesn't see that part. They don't know that part. They think that, oh, he's been training. Why does he look like this? Why does his technique look so bad? And it fucking sucked. I had no training camp. I fought him on 3-day notice. And then I fought Charles Rosa, and I finally got a full training camp. So out of my 5 fights in the UFC, I had one real opportunity. Unfortunately, I couldn't put it together and lost a split decision.
What was that all like fighting during COVID, having to do all the different COVID tests, isolation? Was that an experience?
It wasn't as bad as people make it out to be. I mean, you just had to go get. It was inconvenient, but it wasn't it wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? Like if you got your COVID shots, which a lot of fighters didn't want to do, you didn't really have to worry about anything. But if you didn't want to get your COVID shots, you had to get tested once a week. I fucking went. Everyone was like, I can't believe you went and got a test. Like I'm not a vaxxer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm just, hey man, doctors are pretty smart, and you know what? If they say this is the right thing to do, I guess it's the right thing. I don't do enough research myself to really have an opinion about it. But I knew the convenience of getting my shot of what I could do. I could travel with having a shot. I could go to the PI whenever I wanted. If I didn't get that, they make it really inconvenient. You have to go to the doctor's test every Monday, or you can't get to the PI. So I just did my due diligence, got my shots when I needed to, and I know a lot of people complain about it and say it was so inconvenient, and it was mildly inconvenient. But with that being said, I'm super low maintenance. I'm go with the flow kind of guy, and it wasn't that bad for me.
Most recently you did a little bit of bare knuckle action, did some bare knuckle boxing. Obviously the sport has come so long. 15, 20 years ago, if someone told you there'd be multiple organized bare knuckle associations, what have you told them?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, back in the Wild Wild West days, I'm surprised it wasn't legal back then and illegal now. And my bare knuckle, I was presented with the opportunity to fight Lloyd Mix, who's 2-0 in BKFC. I believe now he's ranked the top 15 in BKFC. So I was like, fuck it, let's run that. Let's run it. I've been in plenty of street fights back in my early days, so I really wasn't worried about that. But the one thing I did not like about the bare knuckle, there's a lot of things I did like about it. I really liked I really liked the 2-minute rounds. And I really liked the chaos of the phone booth style cage or the phone booth style fight. But what I didn't like is my corner in the background, and it wasn't his fault. He was right. It's the whole fight camp is because I'm a power puncher. I'm a 1-2 punch, bang bang, knock you out kind of guy. I have I like to say I have Mike Tyson power, especially in my left hook and my left uppercut. I have a lot. That's how I knocked Frank out. So I've knocked out most of. I think I have out of my 17 wins, I think I have 10 knockouts, and they're all either from a left hook or a left uppercut. I dropped 2 or 3 guys in the UFC. I knocked Frank Camacho out. I dropped Gavin Tucker. I hurt Devontae Smith. It's hurt Charles Rosa with the left hook. But the whole fight camp is my coach kind of telling me, don't throw power, throw for volume. And I practiced that the whole fight camp that I had 8 weeks for. But when I got in the heat of battle, I could just hear Roman yelling, "Don't throw power, don't throw power," and it's like, when you're in the heat of battle, man, you go back to what you know, especially when you start to get tired. And every time I punched him on the top of the head or the forehead, my hands just hurt so bad. I thought I broke my hand in the second round. It was swollen up. I couldn't even make a fist. Went to my surgeon who I had hand surgery with before the UFC. I was very fortunate that it wasn't broken. But me consciously thinking about not trying to hurt myself in the fight was something I didn't like to think about.
For you, what are some of the biggest things you've learned about yourself through your journey in combat sports?
That there's no task too tall for me, man. It's like I said, I'm not a super athlete. I'm not dude. There's guys that come to the gym and they whoop my ass every fucking day. And even when I was in the UFC, and it's just like, but that's the thing. I just think that I've expressed and shown my mental toughness, my physical toughness, recovering from hand surgery and nose surgery and neck surgery, and to keep going. And a lot of things is a lot of guys in the gym have been a lot better than me through the years. But when they run into a hardship, whether it's financial hardship, whether it's a physical hardship, whether it's an injury, whether it's a loss, a lot of those guys buckle and quit, and that's something that I've never done. I don't quit. Fuck, I'm 35 years old. I've had 79 MMA fights or 79 fights. I just did my bare knuckle. I count as a fight, 79, and it's just one thing, and that's one thing that I want to show my son through the years. That's another thing. I was terrified to take this bare knuckle fight, especially against Lloyd Mix, dude. Lloyd's a tough dude. He beat Parisio Pitbull, a long time ago. He lost the decision with Michael Chandler. He's 2-0 in BKFC. But I wanted to test myself. I even requested to have the fight in his hometown. I wanted it to be in his hometown. I wanted the fans to be against me. I wanted his family to be there. I wanted his friends to be there. And because I just want to keep putting myself in these persevering situations, not only to show myself that I can persevere through anything, but to show my son, no matter how hard life gets, we just keep getting knocked down, we get back up, and we keep going. And that's the message I want to deliver all these young kids fighting, whether it's starting a business, whether it's fighting, whether it's you want to be a doctor, you want to go to school, whatever it is. The task is never too tall. And I say, I'm not a super athlete by any means. I wrestled Division III school. I was very unsuccessful at that. I just work my ass off, and I just don't quit, and that's what's helped me persevere through the years.
All right, Justin, last question for you, my friend. Do you think in one way or another you're going to be involved in combat sports for your whole life?
Yeah, I'll be involved in combat sports. I actually, this past year, I started coaching high school wrestling. I'm going to be a head coach for high school wrestling. I have a plethora of amateur fighters that I see a lot of potential in coming up in the next couple of years, 18, 19, 20 years old, man. They're going to be, we're going to get through their amateur career, do whatever we can do. And, I'm 35 years old. I have 79 fights, and I don't think I'm done just yet. Do I ever see myself going back to the big show? Absolutely not. I'd have to rack together way too many. I probably have to rack together 5 wins in a row, which could be 3 years, 4 years, who knows? And that's saying I don't get injured. That's saying I go in there and I handle business. The problem is that the sport's evolving so much, is I just can't keep up with these 22, 23, 24-year-olds that have been doing it since they were 10 years old, 15 years old. My testosterone levels are below 200, and you can't juice, and I just physically can't hang with these young kids anymore. And it's been a really tough battle that I've had to learn over the last couple of years. But to answer your question, yes, I always plan to be involved in combat sports.
Awesome. Well, hey, Justin, man, thank you so much for your time tonight. It's an absolute honor talking to you. Awesome talking to a guy who's been doing it for so long. I feel like guys like you really don't get the credit you deserve, because if it wasn't for you guys who've been doing it so long before it was cool, these kids wouldn't have what they're getting now, good paydays and just a great future ahead of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, man, well, I appreciate you having me. I'm glad we worked this out, and I think it was a great interview, man. It was very original questions compared to how did you get the name Guitar Hero? Oh, what was fighting Frank Camacho like? I think you had original questions. I really appreciate it, and anytime you want to chat, just give me a call.
Awesome, man. Well, that's it for us tonight. I'm Carl Prizza. He is Guitar Hero. Here's Mr. Justin Jaynes. Follow him. Stick around, fight fans.
Take it easy, guys.